So in this month's programme we wanted to look at a different aspect of communications and planning, and we really wanted to focus in on the impact of nuisance issues which concern local residents who happen to live near a proposed development. So we thought we'd pick a topical issue, and that issue is noise associated with wind farms. So the reality is, people don't like change. They don't like development happening near them because they have a sense of a loss of control. And often that's through perception of the change rather than the reality of it, but that's the way it is. And so let's have a look now at the types of issues that wind farm developers have had to deal with when they've been going for planning permissions. So one of the issues we have to deal with is people's perceptions about particular developments. And I'm now joined by Kerry from Proteus Public Relations. Kerry, can you tell me the types of perception problems you encounter when dealing with new wind farm developments?
Yes, when looking at onshore wind farm developments, the two issues that keep coming up time and time again are visual impact and also noise. Noise comes from two different streams. One would be audible noise and people's perceived levels of nuisance noise, and then we also have more recently the inaudible noise, where we have things like low frequency sound, infrasound, and now this new term amplitude modulation.
How effective has the industry been at trying to alleviate the concerns of local people?
Traditionally, as an industry, the communication tools and techniques that we've used have not been particularly effective in trying to help local communities understand the realities of onshore wind farm developments. We need to look at doing things in a different way, and we need to look at the guidelines that we currently have in place and perhaps look at revising those, revisiting them and seeing if they're still applicable in today's technologies.
Okay, so that was a really interesting point by Kerry there about ETSU 97 and the way people think about it. But what we wanted to do now was get the actual experiences of some residents who've been through a wind farm development. When there was the first disclosed that there was going to be a wind farm here, what were the types of issues that were concerning local residents?
One of the major issues was noise. They were very anxious about the noise. The blades passing the tower, the sound of the boom, caused a lot of anxiety, but there isn't any. so that's been rather nice for people who were concerned. Other concerns were bird strikes, television interference. There's been one television interference which was easily remedied. Infrasound, which is this low sound which nobody really quite understands, was another anxiety. Interference with radio controls on aircraft. We're near lots of military zones, but the army were not concerned, but other people were. Those were the main ones, and visual, of course. Some people don't like them.
And now you actually live very close to here. You can actually see these turbines from your house. I mean, what's been your experience now they've been constructed?
Well, I like them. I find them graceful, elegant, and I think they're a useful thing in reducing carbon emissions. So short term maybe, but we need to do something, and they're there now, protecting the planet for our children. So, and I like the look of them.
So clearly the reality of living with a working wind farm was far better than the perceptions before it was built. And that was something that was reflected across the whole community, not just the people we interviewed. Now, Kerry made a very interesting point before about ETSU 97, and that's something that specifically I wanted to take up with Chris from Renewable UK. But before I spoke to him about that, I asked him for some basic advice on how we should be talking to communities about noise issues.
I think first and most important thing is that a trade association and the industry at large takes noise and any concerns that people express about noise extremely seriously, and we take a very positive stance in dealing with the issues both from the public and the planning authority. I think the most important piece of evidence, in addition to stressing that all developments will have to comply and apply very sophisticated legal requirements and the environmental impact assessments which will take into account noise. But the most important piece of information to get across is the level of complaints we receive from the public and communities from operational wind farms is extremely low. So we're dealing with a technology and we're dealing with an industry where noise in the real world really has not been a real issue.
The ETSU is a sophisticated approach to dealing with wind. How do you think we should use the ETSU report when we're applying for planning permissions?
Well, the first important point is to stress the ETSU 97 standard is the legal standard that must be adopted through the planning system. So all developer operators have to apply that. And a key part of the particular standard is the fact that it is very future-proofed in the point that although the industry has grown, the wind farms have expanded and the technology has increased in size over the last decade, the standard makes reference to noise against the background noise. So it has become a future-proof standard because as the technology has grown, so the relative noise levels take that into account. And in addition, even though the technology has grown, the technology in terms of noise output has become much more sophisticated. So the ETSU standard is a perfectly robust reference standard and is the mandated standard industry must apply.
Sure. Now, final question is about, there's been some debate recently about different types of noise coming from wind farms which might have health implications. Is there, could you give me a straight yes or no answer, is there a health risk associated with noise from wind farms?
The short answer is no, both in terms of the occupational risks, which are very small, but more importantly in terms of the community-based noise, which I think is the main concern. All of the current state-of-the-art reports issued through government and relevant research institutes state very clearly the state of knowledge is noise, be it broadband, low frequency or infrasound noise, is not a health risk.
So of course Chris is right. Wind farms are safe and ETSU 97 is future-proof, but that's only half the story. What we're dealing with here are people's perceived fears about development, and some people within a community who are against development will go looking for evidence to say there are problems. And there is lots of evidence out there on the internet to suggest noise problems associated with wind farms, and that maybe ETSU 97 is out of date. It's more than 10 years old, for goodness sake. And that's one we can deal with quite quickly. Why don't we get a review done of ETSU 97, maybe by ETSU, that literally brings it right up to date with the publication of ETSU 2010. There's that problem gone. Because what we are genuinely dealing with here is a perceived problem with development. Here we are standing about 50 metres away from this turbine and we can hardly hear it on what is a very windy day. So it's a real, genuine, perceived problem. So if we can get context and give people the experience of how wind farms operate, it will be a big help. On a recent survey done by the government of 130 operating wind farms across the UK, only 4 of them were found to have noise issues associated with them. 2 of them were sorted out almost overnight with adjustments of the angle of the blades. 1 of them was sorted out with the introduction of some new software which stopped the wind farm when the wind came from a particular direction. That just left 1 site where there was an issue. So we understand that now, and that wouldn't be repeated on future sites. So this is a genuine perception issue that we need to work hard to correct within the communities with which we're dealing. So we've been out there talking to industry, we've been talking to Renewable UK and to residents who've had the experience of living near a wind farm development. So what conclusions have we come to over the last few weeks? It's interesting to see the Watchfield wind farm here in Oxfordshire, where the turbines look like skittles going off into the distance. The communications is a bit like that. You're dealing with concern after concern, like skittle after skittle. But there's a lot more we can do to actually deal with those concerns more effectively than we've been doing in the past, not least of which could be upgrading guidance on regulations about noise in wind turbines. But there's other things we could be trying. If people's concerns about what it's like to actually live near a wind farm, clearly we can take them to show them wind farms. And maybe one of the things we should do is to actually build a house near a farm like this so people can go in it and see what it's like and actually experience the sound themselves. In communications terms, it's what we call killing the dragon, where the dragon or the monster is their perception about how bad a development might actually be. And in that way, you might find that more and more people become reassured that the development is actually far worse than their imagination than it actually turns out to be in reality.